This is a tree that we ended up underneath a few episodes ago, and I really like this tree.
Beautiful.
This one is a live oak, that I know. Sound of bird song in the air.
Oh, there you are with the birds.
Cottonwoods in the distance.
Oh, that's nice. The sun flaring there through the tree branches.
All right, Ben, I remember it like it was yesterday, but it was a few months ago when we said spring is in the air. That is not the case anymore.
No, spring has sprung. We are here at the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall.
It does not feel like fall in Austin, Texas. Summer is kind of an 8-month proposition here.
Yeah, we're pretty selective about our seasons. That's right. We like spring, couple weeks, fall, couple weeks.
Really, summer.
Really focus on the summer.
But we put the kids back in school last week, and so it is a turning of the page. We started out in episode 2 of this podcast going to Sundance and talking about kind of setting the calendar year based on the clock that starts at Sundance. And underneath that system, we're about 60% of the way into the year.
Yep.
But to me, this time of year is always kind of like a big reset.
How so? Say more about that.
If you're not in hardcore production, the summer is a hard time to get a lot of work done, what with the schedule, with being family men as we are.
Yep.
Juggling kind of turnover with interns in the office and vacation plans for the staff and you know, potential subjects and their travel and kind of summer needs. And so feels like things kind of fall apart towards the end of the summer, and then boom, September comes along and get your heads focused and set.
Yep.
And it's time to get to business.
Yeah, everybody sort of takes the summers off and then comes back to the office in September, raring to go, and they're looking to fund projects and get things in production for the upcoming calendar year. And so this is a good time to start setting pitches and to get things basically, like you said, back in the office and ready to go.
On your left.
You're listening to Doc Walks with Ben and Keith.
Well, let me ask you, what does September, October look like for Ben Steinbauer, for the Bear, for your projects?
Well, let's see. We at the Bear have a new producer that's starting with us that we're very excited about. We are going to restart our intern program and have a lot of new folks in the office, so I'm excited for that new energy. And then in terms of pitching documentary projects, we have a pitch that is based on a podcast for a basically comedic true crime documentary.
Tell me more about that one.
That one is called Dr. Dante, and that is a project that our mutual friend Brad Beesley,
We should get him on the show.
who will be a guest on the podcast, no doubt at some point, has been developing for years and years. And we are working together with Jimmy Kimmel's company, Kimmelot, and Campside Media, the podcast company who created the podcast, to basically make a feature doc where this guy is kind of like the original like online influencer who basically scammed tons of people out of millions of dollars. And he's no longer with us, and Bradley was the last person to film him and expose how he pulled his cons. And there's a lot to be learned in modern day from this guy's past story. So this is something that we are working with Julie Goldman and Motto Pictures
Nice.
on, and we are going to take out for financing and hopefully get into production this fall.
So this is a project that Bradley Beesley,
Yep.
Oklahoma by way of Austin, Austin by way of Oklahoma, filmmaker, developed as a film project years ago with the subject when he was still alive, created lots of material that didn't become a film project, but then became a podcast.
He made a short that basically felt like it never quite hit the mark.
Okay.
And he knew that there was always something more to do with this story. Yeah, and then COVID hit, and he had all this material, and the popular podcast series called Chameleon picked it up, and it became one of their most listened to series. And once that came out, Terrence Winter from Wolf of Wall Street and Boardwalk Empire and Sopranos basically licensed the rights and was like, this is my follow-up to Wolf of Wall Street. And so he's been developing the
scripted
Hollywood scripted version of the story. And then I was working with Kimmelot on the High Hopes show, and Bradley brought the project to me, asked if I would be interested in joining and taking it to Kimmelot, and that was 2 years ago. And so we've been developing it ever since, and we originally took it out as a doc series, and we got a lot of feedback that because it wasn't current, this is a story that happened largely in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that they didn't have the appetite basically for this as a series, so we reimagined it as a feature.
Okay.
And have brought on Julie Goldman to
That's a good move.
help us find financing. So that's where we are.
Okay, so that's going to be a big push for you this September.
Yep.
And how do you make that push? What are your steps?
Well, so we've kind of done the traditional development steps of creating a sizzle, creating a deck, aligning with getting a celebrity executive producer like Jimmy Kimmel, and having a big name writer like Terrence Winter. Now, Julie Goldman's company will help us think about who we could cast for the reenactments, which will be a big part of it. Also, pitch it as a package deal so that if, let's say, an Amazon wants to do both the scripted Terrence Winter version and the documentary version, which we're hearing there is a large appetite for right now, that is on the table as part of the sale. And so we will take it out, and what that means is we get on these calls and we basically do a soft shoot routine where we pitch it. We tell them the story. Here's what the movie's going to be like. Here's why you should buy this. Here's why the audience will love it.
So with Julie's booking these calls, you guys, this process has had a lot of ups and downs.
Yep.
How many years into it are you?
Oh, I'm 2 years into it.
And Bradley?
Bradley was filming with this guy back in 2008 and 9.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a long time coming.
So I want to twist this scenario for a second. You are 20 years into your career, long relationships. I was at Bradley, one of your longest relationships, and like I said, we'll have Bradley on the show. He's foundational in your development.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. One of my mentors.
And someone like Julie Goldman, who is a giant in the industry.
Yep.
She's, produced.
And we got to have her on the show at some point too.
For sure. Yeah. I was just on the phone with Julie the other day. Hey, Julie, if you're listening, come on the show. And so 20 years in, you have this opportunity to kind of put together this package of...
These are heavy hitters. Yeah.
Heavy hitters, exactly. Yeah. How would things be different if you were trying to get this thing going, but you didn't have that track record and you didn't have these relationships? What you had is a great story and a great subject, like Dr.
Dante.
Well,
it would be a lot like how I started out, which was I could shoot everything I needed to shoot. I could edit everything I needed to edit. Basically you're kind of looking for support and screening versions of the movie as you go was always the way that I would do it. And I guess in a way still do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, does that answer your question?
Okay, yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I guess, and what has changed, do you think? If you were starting today versus starting when you started, you said you'd go back to kind of how you started.
Yeah.
What's different today, do you think, for people starting out than where you were in that way?
Well, sort of all the cliche answers that I think everybody says are very true. Like, the fact that we're shooting this show on these tiny prosumer cameras and it looks the way that it does and is as easy to edit. And then we can put it on YouTube, and like the barriers to entry for actually having access to the tools are so low.
So you think it's much easier for emerging filmmakers today?
I think it's easier to make the product. I think it's harder for people to watch it because everybody's sort of drowning in their own world of, I hate to use the word contents, but everybody's got the podcasts they listen to and the YouTube channels that they follow and the shows they're watching on Netflix. So to break into that and get somebody to pay attention to your movie, let alone like get off the couch and go to a theater, I think that is harder than ever these days. So I guess if I was starting out, I know this is such a cheesy answer, but I would just be all over social media all the time and would be trying to build up a following, get people excited, and be building basically like an audience for the thing that I was making while I was making it.
And are you doing that now?
No.
Not at all.
Well,
Me either.
I mean, I'm 47, and so speaking the language of social media, I do to an extent, but not the way that, if I was in my 20s, which is what you're asking me, that I would be able to do, because that's just not the place I am in my life anymore. I feel like this is kind of like an old guy answer, but
Yeah, it's a truthful answer.
yeah.
And I mean, I only ask because, like you said, all the things that you said you would do if you didn't have these long-standing relationships and kind of access to more of the industry side of things.
Yeah, well, one interesting thing I will just say, almost as like a cautionary tale for young filmmakers, is that at a certain point what I realized is I was a decent shooter, pretty good editor. I was above average, I think, as an editor, and I can still edit, but I
Got a decent outside shot.
I got soft hands, yeah, the whole thing. But I realized at a certain point that if I could hire people who were better than me, that would make my work a lot stronger. And so I let my shooting ability atrophy. And so now when I'm trying to develop projects, I have to find somebody who will come with me to go shoot. And so that, in a way, hamstrings me a little bit. So I would say for everybody coming up, keep those skills sharp and know how to shoot.
I mean, I'm going to push back on that as your friend, as your colleague, as your fan. You could pick up a camera and figure that shit out over the course of 2 days of production.
Yeah.
And figure out what your voice is in that. And certainly it's not going to be the same as one of the great shooters that you've had the luxury of working with and the pleasure of working with, who are, rocking an Arri Alexa or some of the other fancy pants cameras that I know that you have.
Well, that's what I'm used to working with at this point.
And it doesn't have to be this rinky-dink little podcast camera, Sony FX6 or a Canon C200 or 300 or C70, which is my camera of choice. You'd be run and gun and back at it before too long. So I wouldn't sell yourself short.
Okay. All right. I like this. Thanks for the pep talk, Keith. Yeah.
But I bring up when I was pushing on the point of your industry connections and your industry knowledge and your relationships, only because your answer of what you do if you didn't have that stuff today is dip in your credit card and put in a lot of sweat equity and man hours,
right?
And roll the dice. And that is, that's how I got started. That's how you got started. That's how I think just about everybody gets started.
Yeah.
And I think if you were at it today, you're absolutely right. That's still the way to get started. It's not only the most effective way to say, hey, you don't know me, I haven't done anything that you've heard of, but I have something to say.
Right.
You kind of have to put your money where your mouth is and lay it on the line.
Absolutely.
But I think the idea of putting your stuff out on social media and building your audience from the get-go is something they've been saying since we both got started, right? Like build your audience, know the people. Cindy Dabowski was on one of our episodes, and they talked about
Yeah.
putting together this massive email list.
Yep.
And
in building
that's-
community.
building community off of that, and that's
Yeah.
that precedes social media. That precedes like the opportunity to create
Yep.
a TikTok following or a Twitter following or
Yep,
whatever
that's
they call
true.
it now. I just think it's interesting that like if you've got a story to tell, whether you're somebody like the esteemed Ben Steinbauer with 20 years of experience and festival laurels and old friends to call on speed dial in his Rolodex.
Ah, shucks. Keith, you're making me sound way cooler than I am. I definitely...
That's right. Nobody's listening. It's okay. When they saw we didn't have a guest this week, they tuned out anyway. So don't make too much of it. This is really for an audience of one. But the reality is, right, like, we all have to kind of start somewhere. And we started out by talking about, like, September and October, fall is in the air. This is a moment to, like, push a thing out into the world and try and generate energy.
Yes.
And whether that energy is with Julie Goldman setting up calls with HBO and Netflix, or that energy is making a commitment to putting, like 5 clips on the internet over the course of the next 5 weeks.
Yep.
To like develop an audience, to kind of like build a little groundswell of momentum.
Right. This is the time to get into production, basically, is what we're saying. And so what does it look, you ask about me, here let's flip around here. Maybe this is a good little, look at how pretty this is. We got lily pads.
Let's see. Let's
Look
see
at
what we've
this.
got here. Yeah, it's so pretty.
Well, I guess maybe it looks good from afar, but far from good.
There you go.
In close up.
Monet's water lilies.
That's with a couple of plastic water bottles. Yeah. So all right, so you're asking me all these questions. Let me ask you, Keith. What does what does the fall look like for you?
The fall is hopefully going to be busy and full of business. We've got over at Go Valley, I've got like a really great team. Megan Gilbride producing from her perch in Los Angeles. Got Sarah Wilson producing from the house next door to the office where I also lived, which works out great for us.
Who is also your wife?
That helps. That helps with that. We've got Veronica Maciel, our in-house coordinating producer, who kind of keeps us steered in the right direction and on top of things. We got Austin Reedy, our editor, who's currently editing a series for HBO out of our office, working for somebody else, but hanging out every day. And then we've got a team of assistants and interns: Shayla, Luca, Julie, Josh, Sydney. So we have a great team. And so basically this fall we've got a kind of modern twist on true crime that we've been developing with Concordia Studios. And my partner on that is an actor and filmmaker named Frank Mosley.
Who we met at Sundance this year.
That's right.
On the podcast. Yep.
Yeah. That's a project Frank and I developed for about 2.5, 3 years before we got really serious about it. Kind of had to figure out what the approach was, figure out access, figure out if this is really a thing that needed to be made and needed to be made by us at this time. Like this time last year, we started negotiations with Concordia Studios. And those negotiations worked out. We started getting financing rolling in January.
Concordia, for our listeners, is whose company?
They're a great and powerful documentary company led by Davis Guggenheim, Oscar winner Davis Guggenheim from An Inconvenient Truth.
Waiting for Superman, still the Michael J. Fox movie.
He has a movie out right now called Deaf President Now that premiered at Sundance when we were there. And he's got a great team that surrounds him. Casey and Lizzie and Lorene Powell-Jobs is his partner in that. They're a powerful team. They're people we're really excited to partner with. But our work is not done. They put in enough money for us to really put this development into gear.
Yep.
And to make like a really robust sizzle that showcases years of work.
Right.
A really in-depth deck, budget and financing plan and production plan. And so basically together we are going to be going out this month and next month, looking to kind of flesh out the rest of the team and the rest of the financing to be able to make this project a complete reality.
And so that is not coincidental, right? That's on this same clock we're talking about.
Yeah,
So
just by design.
Yep.
We made a deal with them late last fall. The money started coming in January. The goal was to have those deliverables in place this summer to be able to hit the ground running real hard right now. And I'll be honest, fully honest here, I am a few weeks late on my deliverables, and by a few, like 6 or 7. So anyway, that's my biggest project. And then secondarily, I have another project, another doc that I've been developing kind of the old-fashioned way with no support, partnered with a filmmaker out of Dallas named Daniel Labs.
Yep, Daniel,
this is
who worked at Oak Cliff for a long time.
Daniel's a programmer, he's a director. He worked at the Dallas International Film Festival, he worked at Oak Cliff, he's done programming for other festivals around the country. And he's also made several shorts and a feature. And he had access and an idea about a documentary that is, at this point, an all-archival kind of cinephile documentary about an international auteur in the 20th century with unique access to a trove of footage that nobody has ever seen before. As soon as we started talking about it, I got very excited. And for me, it brought up one of like kind of my favorite things about filmmaking, which is just an opportunity for like a massive amount of education. Like I didn't have deep knowledge of the subject by any stretch. I had like an interest and an appreciation. And initially I said, I don't know that I'm the right person for this project because there are dozens of people out there in the world, if not hundreds or even thousands, who know so much more about the subject than I do. They'd probably be better choice for this. But Daniel believed in me and my voice as a storyteller and said, well, why don't we make the discovery and the education a part of the process? And so we've leaned into that. So anyway, we've spent a few months, about a year and a half since we started talking, and a few months of significant focus to really dial in to create a package for this doc. Because it's all archival at this point, there's no production. We didn't have to run around with cameras at all. We're basically digging through archives, pulling together rip reels, and making sizzle reel and deck and production plan and budget that allow us to kind of go out and start applying for grants.
Okay.
And
Well, that's interesting. Why are you going the grant route?
Because this is really a culture documentary, and it's got a historical element, it's got a culture element. It's really an art for art's sake kind of story. But I think it's an important subject matter and an important, like cultural landmark to kind of like to plant a little flag of history that hasn't existed. And so, whether funders will see it that way, I do not know. But the other reason we went out for grants was because grants have deadlines. And without deadlines, I'd be chit-chatting with Daniel and Megan and Sarah and Austin about this, 9 months from now. So,
You are a good chit-chatter.
Thanks.
It's true.
But yeah, so we used the deadline of the Austin Film Society development grant to get our acting gear this summer. That grant did not require a sizzle reel. It just required a write-up and some financial ideas and kind of putting some ideas on paper, which isn't my favorite thing to do, to like write about a filmmaking process that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
But I wrote about that in my write-up, that this will be, like all the documentaries I strive to make, a journey of discovery that can only be figured out through the process of making the thing. But that we've got a great foundation to start with, historical basis. And like I said, the fact that this footage has never been seen by anybody, and it's not a little amount of footage, it's a lot of footage.
Okay.
Really gets me excited about it. So we used that deadline this summer to get going, and then immediately on the heels of that, we started identifying some other opportunities. We were invited to pre-apply to Sundance Catalyst, which I've never been involved with before. I don't know a lot about, but I know I like the idea of catalyzing some forward momentum and some financing and some investment.
Catalyzing sounds good. Yeah. So how did you get that invite? How does that work?
Well, so I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you. Like, I know the nice people at Sundance are like kind of working in the shadows to kind of lift projects up and place them through this Catalyst program into view of investors, individual investors, I believe.
Okay.
And so I think they reached out to different sources through the industry to ask for recommendations. And somewhere along the line, our project bubbled into that system. And so basically we got an email from them saying, you've been invited to submit a pre-application, and depending on how what they determine from the pre-application, we might be invited to apply, and then depending on how they feel about that application, we might be allowed to mingle into the world of the Catalyst at Sundance this year.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I said, it's all new to me, but again, the biggest and most real part that came of that, one, a little validation, a little slap on the back that says, hey, somebody out there thinks this is a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yep.
But the biggest thing that came of it is like another deadline. And with that deadline required a sizzle reel.
Yeah.
And so suddenly it wasn't just a write-up and a budget and a deck. It was put your money where your mouth is and show us why this thing deserves to be a movie.
Right.
And for me, I'm the kind of filmmaker, so much of the work that I do comes to life in the edit. It's the reason why I hold, my editor, Austin, in such high regard, is because it's really in collaboration with him that so many of the things I'm excited about in the work have come out.
And so how, especially in a project like this that is archival based, how do you go about creating the sizzle reel out of existing footage?
Well, so to finish on the thought about Austin wasn't available right now to work with us on the sizzle reel. And Daniel, who initiated the project with me, said he wants to spend time together in the edit with me. So we decided to throw our hats in together and make this sizzle reel. And that was like a great way to kind of jumpstart our working collaboration. And so what we did is we went and we ripped, like I said, this is a film about a filmmaker. It's a film about an international auteur, like a household name filmmaker with a big long line of credits and moments in his filmography. So we started by pulling material from that filmography and just, like I said, creating a rip reel.
Okay. So you're looking at his past work, pulling things out of it that you think are...
that speak to us,
Yeah,
that kind of communicate some of the ideas that we're trying to tap into. But like the biggest and most important thing, and there would be no project without this, is this trove of our archival material that Daniel identified. We had to make a relationship with the archive.
Right.
And so that's what we spent most of the last year doing, was connecting with this archive, explaining what we'd like to be doing with the material that they've been protecting, that they have the rights to, and kind of winning over their participation and collaboration, which I'm glad to say we have, because there'd be no project without that.
Right.
It's one thing to have those conversations and to make that relationship. It's another thing to like start working with the material. And so that's kind of where we're at, is like pull together the archival material and start cutting it.
So you did the actual editing of the sizzle reel?
Yeah, Daniel and I did it together. Daniel initiated it. I jumped in with him. We kind of tag teamed it for a week together here in Austin. He lives in Dallas. And like I was saying before, for me as a storyteller, it's so much of what I'm excited about process-wise happens in the edit. And so the process of making the sizzle reel, which is something I kind of put off, because I like to keep the idea in the idea sphere as long as possible.
Yes.
But when it came time, like, okay, the rubber meets the road, like we got to make something here, we got to show people, and we got to win them over.
Right.
In the process of putting the sizzle together, suddenly like the way the film is going to work, should work, could work, was made clear.
Yeah.
Some of the ideas we had didn't bear fruit, and some of the things that we came up with, we would have never, thought of on our own without the experience of just like juxtaposing pieces of footage and trying things and mixing music and other ideas in. So anyway, that's been a really incredible and fun project this summer. So I come out of the summer with 2 projects ready to go out with our hand out.
Gotcha. So, and is that, so to ask you the same question you asked me, is that basically how you would have approached it when you were starting out in your younger years, or is that evolved and is
Well,
it different?
It's, I would say you taking these two projects, like one is the new way and one is the old way. And so with the true crime story, working with Concordia, that is, my agent set a meeting with Concordia. It was a general meeting. That isn't a meeting I would have been able to set up myself 20 years ago.
Right.
I wouldn't know how. I wouldn't know to even ask for it.
Yep.
Out of that general meeting, usually nothing comes out of general meetings. It's just like a way to get to know you, a little meet and greet.
Yep.
We should work together down the line somewhere.
Right.
But this is the rare instance where a general meeting turned into a financing deal.
Wow.
The
And so in that general meeting, for our audience that doesn't necessarily understand that term, your agent basically says, hey, I sent your bio and talked you up to blank company. So in this case, it was Davis Guggenheim's company, Concordia,
Yep.
and somebody over there whose job it is to keep track of filmmakers.
Casey Muir, who's that's exactly her job, is to find new projects to make deals with.
Yep.
To be aware of what's going on in the industry, to kind of know what the company wants and what the industry can bear.
Yep.
Like we just had a meeting and we hit it off and we got into a place where we found some common ground and she said, let's work together. So that happened, about a year ago.
Right. And so then from there, a lot of times it's, they're sort of keeping track of what you're doing. But in this instance, you pitched this project probably, or talked about it in that general.
I said, well, what are you guys interested in? What are you looking for this year? And she said, oh, we're interested in anything. We're looking for all kinds of things, pretty much anything except true crime. I said, oh, that's funny because I have one of those, but I'm not really pitching it yet because I haven't taken it far enough to really know exactly what I want to do with it. And I want to be careful with it because people do such a terrible job of making like true crime, which has like a stigma against it. And it's an earned stigma, I think, in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, now I'm curious. So what do you have in mind? And that turned into a deal. And so to answer your question, like, how did I end up, how would I treat it differently if I was starting out today? That project I couldn't do this way. Like I wouldn't, that's a project from the get-go.
That you need, that existed because of your agents and the
It
connections.
existed because of the work that I've done. My agent was able to set the meeting. Casey was aware of my previous work.
Yeah.
I had met Davis years ago. A lot of dominoes had been set.
Right.
In the 15 years leading up to that meeting.
Gotcha.
But on the archival doc about the filmmaker, that is one that I'm literally doing exactly what I think I would have done in 2004 when I got started. I partner with a strong collaborator. I did a round of research. I talked myself out of making it and got talked back into it. All the steps that I wouldn't have gone into when I started. And then we made something, and we were utilizing grants as a motivating factor to hit deadlines. We may not get a single grant for the project, but the process of like filling out first the AFS grant application, then the Sundance Catalyst grant application. We're applying to the Meadows Foundation. We're going to the foundation library to research other grants that we don't even know about, just like I did in 2004. So for me, that process hasn't changed. I think what's changed is like my abilities as a filmmaker have sharpened and my communications with my collaborators has been emboldened and strengthened. I'm a better and stronger partner than I was 20 years ago. So I'm coming into September looking to pitch these two significant projects, significant to me projects. And then I've got at least two other docs that are like in the building blocks for that, so that as we go into the pitch process, hopefully we're connecting with execs, with financiers, with independent investors. And when people say, this isn't right for us, what else do you have?
Then you've got something else in the hopper. Yep.
I've always got something else.
Yeah.
And I've always got something else, not because like I'm a mercenary who's like, if I don't have something else, I can't make a career.
Right.
I got something else because I've got like a million curiosities.
Right. Which is
So,
awesome, which is what you need ultimately to be a storyteller. You gotta want to tell the stories and go out and actively find them and develop them.
yeah. And I think like one of the downsides is they're all very different from each other. In addition to these documentaries, I've got a scripted animated series that I've been kind of knocking my head against for a couple of years with really great producers out in LA, trying to figure out how to get this unique show into the streamers' back pocket or onto TV screens. You know, I've got 3 different scripts that I've written with my screenwriting partner. I've got 2 different indie features that I'm trying to write myself right now.
Wow. Yeah, because you also work a lot in scripted and in fiction.
You know, I don't get as much done as I'd like to. And honestly, adding this podcast in, it's really complicated things in that this is the thing that's got the fastest turnaround and the most like day-to-day.
Well, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this, and you're welcome.
But I've loved it because it also is so many of these projects. Literally, if you hear every project I've talked about has a number attached to it that is registered in years.
Right.
Right. So to make something like this, where we are talking on a Wednesday morning and 2 Thursdays from now, people are going to hear this.
Yep.
That scratches a big itch for me, which is like actually just making something.
Yeah, me too.
And here's the grackles. Hello, little grack.
Let's see if we can get it to grack.
Okay. Well, so we started out by talking about, again, fall may be in the air, but it's about 95 degrees here. We're both
Sweating.
sweaty middle-aged men. Young people of all stripes are zooming past us on this trail.
Yep.
Men with their shirts off, glistening in the sun, muscles, young people, older people that are somehow in much better shape than me.
And here we are with our pot bellies and our sensible shoes.
Yeah. But hopefully we've accomplished something in this conversation. We talked about kind of what the next 2 months are looking like from a pitch perspective. Let's just lightning round some other details about the fall that kind of make this an exciting time of the year. You mentioned getting your internship program back up and running.
Yep. So if anybody listening is interested in being an intern at the Bear and coming over to work with us on developing projects and working on commercials, we're always accepting applications. So you can find out more about that at our website, thebear.us. And then, as everybody who's a film lover knows, as we get closer to the holidays, that's when like the award winning films start to be released. And so there are certain festivals that come along that go with that. So like the Toronto International Film Festival.
Yeah, Toronto's about to happen. IDFA over in Amsterdam. In New York, you've got Doc NYC, which coincides with kind of like a whole round of films that came out in the spring in the festival market are now hitting theaters in the fall. So like the films that you were looking at, that you were hearing about at Sundance, at South by, even in Tribeca, are now hitting streamers. They're hitting theaters. There's a real art house revolution that's happening nationwide. Reed Davenport and Sandy Dubowski and some of the other filmmakers that are self-distributing have shown us. So I think like paying attention, if you're an emerging filmmaker or if you're a mid-career filmmaker or like us, like paying attention to what other people have been working these last 3 or 4 years on that are finally ready to share.
Yep.
This is a great time of year for that. And I think what you can do, like it's easy to feel out of touch and out of sync with the festival world if you're in the middle of production or on the front side of a thing that feels like 3 years away from being done. But just going to festival websites and seeing like what's a premiere at Toronto and what sounds interesting to you. Where are some names that you've heard before from veteran filmmakers, bringing their 4th or 5th film out, and what are some brand new names, some new voices?
That's right. You can learn a lot by just going to festivals' catalogs, and looking at what's premiering.
Yeah.
Reading the descriptions of the movies to get a sense for like what's being funded, what kind of stories are being told right now. And
go back to the beginning of the year, look at the Sundance catalog, the South by Southwest catalog, and see like which of those films are now available, and read reviews. Even if you don't get a chance to see the film, see what people are talking about when they talk about that film. What's an important subject? What's a groundbreaking stylistic choice?
This is all great advice. And as usual, Keith, you kind of have to convince me to do these episodes where it's just you and I, because I sometimes worry that we aren't delivering much of value to people when it's just talking about our experience. But as usual, I'm very glad that we did it, that you convinced me, and I hope that you guys got something out of listening to us talk about how we think about our projects and what the fall is going to bring for us.
Yeah, Ben.
And how do we wrap this up, Keith?
Well, we're back here underneath the same live oak tree we started at, so that's a pretty good, like, full circle thing. We have some exciting guests booked for the near future. We got Bradley Beesley.
Coming on board, yeah.
We got to get Brad out here. So fall is not just a pitch session, kind of like get it going on the business side, but it's also a great time for this podcast to turn it up a notch with some new blood.
I love it. All right. Well, we're gonna turn it up a notch, you guys. So thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more.
All right. Thanks for Doc Walking. Doc Walks is created, produced, and edited by my friend Ben Steinbauer of The Bear.
Hello. And my friend Keith Maitland of Go Valley.
Thanks for tuning in.
Follow us at DocWalksPod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.